Welcome to the garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. Filming this on early Friday morning up at Roadwood, Jay Sifford's garden up in the mountains. We came up here for 24 hours basically and filmed at another mountain garden that he had designed in the past, and so we'll have those videos coming up. We shot a couple videos over there, a tour video and then kind of a top 10 favorite plants in that garden video. I've got a nice backdrop this morning in Jay's incredibly beautiful garden. Got the Colorado blue spruce, have the Skylands spruce over here beside me. This is one of our favorites. I wish we can try these Oriental spruces in Raleigh, but limited success. They're going to need a little bit of protection, and I think that protection I'm going to have to offer them. I'm going to lose this yellow color a little bit. The all gold juniper coming through here. Really, again, can't beat this backdrop. He's a real artist with using these conifers and then using a lot of our native pollinator plants and grasses, and then just anyway, he's just quite the artist with plants, as you guys have seen in some previous videos from Charlotte and from here at Roadwood. So let's see. I added to the weekly, on the weekly garden planner, I've added that garden journal. I added another update to it this week, which was a section that allows you to put in a guarantee on the plant. So if you bought a plant at a place that has a 1-year guarantee or whatever, you can actually add that guarantee and the timing that it expires. So, you know, if you go back and put the date that you purchased the plant as 7/15/25, and it's got a year guarantee, you'd put the guarantee as 7/15/26 in there, and it'll actually keep up with your guarantees on your plant. So if you lose a plant over the winter and you happen to look through, you can say, oh wow, I had a guarantee on that plant. So I think that's a good additional feature, and it's on the weekly garden planner over on the website. There's a discount code down below this video. All right, we have 24 questions, and I think there's at least one more videos, or there'll be a bonus Q&A either this week or next week. What else do I know? I put up a video from Nico and Marlene's garden 2 days ago. There's a very funny chicken at the beginning of the video. If you haven't seen that video yet, I think that's a pretty good tour. Yesterday's video will be another tour where the two of them were showing us some of the various nursery related things in Boskop, and I just talked over the video that we had shot. So that one was pretty fun. And this upcoming week, we have stuff from our garden and more stuff coming from the Netherlands. You guys won't believe some of the things we shot over there, and some of the things we learned. It was a lot of fun. Okay, let's jump into some questions. Somebody asked, how is the native garden progressing? Haven't heard much recently. Does it have a separate channel or playlist? It doesn't have a separate channel, but it does have a playlist called Native Garden. And you can go to our main channel page on YouTube, HortTube with John Putnam, and there should be a tab that says playlist, and then you can go into the playlist. I'm going to make a playlist for Jay Sifford's garden, things that we've done with him when I get home and start editing these videos, because now we've done so many videos with him. There's one for the Giberson garden down in Athens, Georgia, and there's one for the native garden at the house. So the native garden is actually progressing a lot more than you would think. I have not planted much over there because I'm waiting for those wood chips to break down. But we've got a corral of a lot of native perennials that we've been collecting all year. And a bunch have been sent to us in the last few weeks and unboxed. And I didn't do unboxing videos for them. I'm going to just do the videos when they go in the ground. But I have some, I videoed myself taking stuff out of boxes. Didn't know what I was going to do with that video later. But anyway, those plants have gone into the vegetable garden because a lot of the vegetable garden has come out at this point. So we're storing all kinds of native plants that are going in that garden first thing in the spring. And we're going to be going up to our friends at North Creek up near Philadelphia and spending some time with them in the next week or two. And as part of that, we'll be collecting some additional native plants for the garden there. That's one of the that area around Philadelphia is really got a lot of things. It's a native plant community up there that you know, that we're going up there spending some time with as well. So again, we're trying to add things to that garden. I don't want to just fill it up. That's not my goal. It wasn't the goal with the other garden either, just to fill it up overnight. I really want to be selective, find things that folks can really use in their gardens, but aren't the everyday thing that you could just go grab off any shelf and call it native. So that's the goal. It's not, you know, I'm not trying to race through it, but I do want to put a big chunk into it right at the beginning of spring next year. So when we have the open garden tickets are already up on the website, by the way, for next year. And the event at the Ralston will be added to it pretty soon. There'll be a separate ticket for the Ralston event on Thursday night, where we'll be touring the Ralston, and all that money's going directly to the Ralston. It'll be, I don't know, $25, I think, for that ticket, but that should be a fun evening at the Ralston, walking around. I don't even know where the heck I was going with that, but as part of the open garden, I want the native garden to look much, much fuller than it did this past year, because if you were there this year, it had like 30 plants in it. I would like to have hundreds of plants in it. So we are collecting things, and we'll put all those things in April 15th to May 15th, something like that. This person's in Seattle. They had a freeze event several years ago where it froze after their last frost date. You know, these things can be pretty devastating. We had one early 2000s when I had the nursery. We had 2 25-degree nights in late April, like April 26th, April 27th, where our average last frost date is April 15th. And that frost date, we typically are talking about temperature near 32 degrees, where you can get these cold pockets where you can get below freezing temperatures. But when we're talking about hard freezes, you know, these are temperatures where we're predicting them to be below 32, you know, and we had 2 25-degree nights. It was pretty devastating to plants that had fully woken up. So this person was in Seattle, had a similar event. They have cracks in some of their trees because the trees were in the process of pumping liquids up in the top, and then, you know, they froze and cracked, put cracks in it. Will they heal themselves? I think it's a tree to tree issue. I mean, I can see old trees where they've had cracks in them like this, and they just grow right on and seem to be fine. And some just languish. And I think if your trees several years later are languishing, it's probably not a good sign. It's been an interesting year of consultations. There have been very few consultations that I've had. I offer Zoom consultations over on the website. There have been very few consultations I had this year that didn't involve a cracked limb on something, where last fall the temperature crashed so quickly that a lot of things cracked like that. We had one cracked branch up at the top of our redbud. Luckily, it was up at the top on just a branch, and it wasn't down. It could have just as easily been the very bottom of that tree that cracked, and it would be probably gone now, or languishing in some way that I would eventually take it out. So I felt fairly fortunate that our crack in our tree was, you know, up high, and wasn't that big, and I was just able to cut it out. So again, I think it's a tree to tree issue on typically what I see, but if they're sitting there languishing 3-4 years later, it's probably not a good sign that they're ever going to be, you know, all that healthy. How's our Roses Blush Blueberry doing? Here's a little video of that from the house. I love this plant. I think it's just absolutely one of the great natives to the Southeast United States. We're way north of where it's actually native to, so it's not, you know, I don't know what people think about, you know, when you say natives and I say the entire Southeast United States, obviously it's not Raleigh where this plant is from. We're right on the northern edge of where this particular blueberry will grow. But I would say that pretty much all blueberries are undervalued for their decorative or their ornamental value. The fall color is incredible on all of them. The flowers are good. The pollinator activity around blueberries is always great. The blue-green foliage, some of the selections now are, you know, for some ornamental qualities. But this particular one is a selection of a Darrow's blueberry, which is a Gulf Coast native, and absolutely love that plant. And I think that plant you know, our garden is a one-of-a-kind kind of garden, you know, one of this, one of that, and we can show people plants. But if you're planting that plant in your garden and you like drifts, you like bigger collections of things, that plant would look unbelievable as 5 or 7 or 9 or 12 of them planted together. I think that blue and that pink color in it would really, really show up. Number 4 are cherry trees, short-lived plants. Mine look rough this season. I do think that they need more space. They don't necessarily match our ornamental gardens all that well unless you're continuing to irrigate them quite a bit. My Kwanzaa cherry, I've pointed this out a bunch over the years, ran roots all through my irrigation system. Like every box I take the cover off of had cherry roots running through it. That thing was super aggressive in my garden. It looked great because it had managed to get out through all my mulch everywhere and had water. You know, anytime I watered anything, it had access to it. So, and I'm sure it still looks great over there, but I do see some of them that look pretty rough when they're planted. They don't, it's definitely not a tree that wants grass grown right up to the base of it and sit in the middle of a full sun front yard. You know, it's just not that kind of middle of the garden, middle of the front yard kind of plant. It needs water. I think that it needs water and it needs space to root. And so when I see one in the neighborhood that's put in the hell strip, you know, between the sidewalk and the street, you know, in that little bit of narrow rooted space, they're always dropping leaves during the summertime and just overall look kind of rough. So I think it's a plant that, judge the size of your lot a little bit for that plant. I put it in that, not as annoying as a red maple, but semi-annoying root system on it that can really get going through your garden. Not one I'd put over my septic field either, because I mean, literally, that roots that big around, just running right with my PVC pipes under the ground in my irrigation system that I had installed. It just took the easiest path it could find through. And where I had dug those PVC trenches in the past is where the easiest route was, and it just took roots and ran them right down those paths. When and how to transplant blue rug junipers and mint julep junipers in 7B. Would it be better to plant or transplant conifers now to get established before winter, or wait until it cools down? If you're in zone 7B, I would wait until you have cooler nights before you're planting most things, really. So, you know, you don't have to worry about winter with a juniper in zone 7B. I've literally planted frozen junipers. I think I've told this story before, but I got in so much trouble at this job years ago. I was working for this landscaper, and we planted frozen blue rug junipers on a bank one morning. They were, I mean, literally completely frozen root balls. And when the pots, when it freezes, it gets locked into the pot. So we cut the pots on them to do this job. That job was worth whatever amount of thousands of dollars, and these pots were probably worth, you know, at that time, a nickel a piece or something, and it was 100 pots. It was, $5 worth of pots or something. And we got back to the nursery, and these folks had been in the nursery business for a long time. They had struggled through the nursery business to build this thing over the years, and those slit pots were I got in a lot of trouble for cutting the pot off, but we couldn't get them out of the pot any other way. My point there is we planted frozen junipers and they were fine. They didn't miss a beat of going in the ground completely with a frozen root ball. But if I was gonna move, I don't know how big your blue rug junipers are. You're probably gonna need to cut them back a little bit before you start moving them. But I've moved a lot of junipers over the years. They're not that hard. You just wanna do it, again, while they're dormant, a little bit later into the fall before you do it. Hopefully they haven't been in the ground a terribly long time, and they're not like 12-foot runners on them or anything like that, because by that point it's going to be hard to figure out where roots have gone. You're going to need a big giant root ball, and I'm probably not going to want to transplant something like that just in general. But if they're been in the ground for only like 3 years, I would transplant them, but I'd wait till it gets cooler in the fall. Let's see. In Michigan wants to transplant grasses with dead areas in them, dehydrated. Should they cut them back before they transplant it? Is it too late to do it? Will it bounce back? Why don't grasses do well if planted in the fall? So I don't, just because, I guaranteed plants for a year when I was a landscaper, I kind of figured out over time, the plants that I would lose consistently. And in our clay soil in Raleigh, North Carolina, if I planted dormant ornamental grasses in September, October, November, a lot of times they did not wake up in the spring, or they woke up with very little energy, you know, where they had rotted enough during the winter time that it was a giant setback. They went from being 1 gallon or 3 gallon size to being much smaller over the course of the winter. And I just found that if I just collected the money for the job where we were and then came back April 15th or beginning of May and planted those grasses and then collected the rest of the money then for the job, that the customer had more success and I had less, you know, expenditure on my own. Now, in some other place where the soil may drain better in the wintertime and you don't have to worry about the clay being overly wet, especially because, you know, when I'm digging a new hole in that clay soil and I'm breaking it up, it really does become a place that can collect water in the wintertime. So it may not be as bad for you to do it in the fall. I have no idea. I've never transplanted a grass or divided a grass in the fall in Michigan. So I don't know the answer to that in terms of the fall planting part. But in terms of cutting them back, if they've already died back, it's irrelevant. Yeah, you can cut them back if you want to and move them at that time. You may be able to divide a couple of them. You may find that they just kind of naturally divide themselves a bit, you know, as you're taking them out of the ground. But, you know, if you don't think it stays wet during the winter in your area, then you can do it in the fall, or you can wait until the late winter, early spring when they start showing a little bit of signs of new life and then transplant them at that time. They tend to transplant better when they have active new root growth, because they just plant them and they grab right a hold and they just start getting and going. Let's see. This number 7, this person has marginal salvias in 8A, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I'm just on the other side of Winston-Salem now. From Raleigh, Winston-Salem's about the middle of from where I'm standing here in West Jefferson, going back to Raleigh right now. So there's a bunch of these black and blue Amistad, a bunch of these salvias that are like zone 8 to 10. And if we can get them to come back one year, they come back every year in zone 7B or 8A. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's like dahlias in zone 7. If you plant 10 dahlias and 5 of them come back, those 5 will repeatedly come back forever. It seems like you just have to get them through one winter in the ground like that. Any way to help them come back without having to dig them up? There's not a whole lot you could do, really. You can make sure that area is mulched with some leaves, maybe. That may add some insulation to it. I wouldn't add a thick layer of like hardwood mulch or anything like that over the top of them. Sometimes that can inhibit a bit perennials coming back in the spring vigorously. So when your leaves are dropping, you could take some leaves and pile them back there a bit, and then March 15th, you could go back in there and thin it back out a bit, and then maybe that'll help insulate them just a bit. That's about all you could really do. But again, if they'll come back once, they'll careful what you wish for. Most of them are bullies in the garden too, and so once they come back, they'll really come back, and they can really get the spreading through your garden. This person's in Apex, North Carolina, near me. They have paniculatas, hydrangea paniculatas, and Annabelles, or hydrangea arborescens, which Charlie and I were in the did some hiking last weekend. As you're watching this, we climbed 5 peaks in 2 days. I have never been as sore as I was Monday on Labor Day and Tuesday. I was trying to keep up with a 26-year-old in the mountains. And a 27-year-old, good gracious, in the mountains, and it was a lot. But the hydrangea arborescens were in bloom up on top of Table Rock Mountain and Pinnacle Mountain and Sassafras Mountain in South Carolina. It was just fun to see. About 3,000 feet up, something like that, is where most of those hydrangea arborescens are, and we were just walking through fields of them up there. It was pretty fun to see our native hydrangea arborescens in its full glory up in the mountains. But no, okay, so this person, for whatever reason, their paniculatas and Annabelles have, in early summer, they were white. and now they've kind of gone back to a greenish color. Yeah, they can fade through that in our area. That's not atypical for them to. We don't typically get the pinks and reds that they'll get up here in the mountains, and there's not one behind me. If you watch the video from upcoming this week, there's some lime lights and some white weddings on that job that we filmed that are in pink up here in the mountains, as you would expect, and further north they're going to be pink and red and all those colors. But we can get them either go to kind of a papery color, or I see them sometimes kind of a greenish going back to a kind of a greenish color on their way back in that direction. But it's not abnormal, especially in a summer where I think a lot of the rains we've had in Raleigh, the Raleigh area this year, have been really superficial, where they've been really heavy rains that with a lot of runoff and not a lot of soaking into the ground. So they may have also been a little bit dry, but I've had my paniculatas do that kind of greenish color look in the late season. This person has a 7-foot tall, 2-foot wide Golden Falls redbud coming in 2 weeks. It's being delivered to them. Should they plant it right away? Is it enough time to get roots established for the first frost? I don't know where. Oh, they're in 7A northeast. For me, I'm definitely going to put that thing in the ground. I don't want it. They want to know if they should put it in a container and overwinter it in the garage. Even if you put it in a container, I wouldn't keep it in the garage all winter. I'd keep it outside most of the winter, except for the extremes where the pot would freeze. So that would be, maybe 30 nights during the winter, 40 nights during the winter it'd be in the garage. The rest of the time it'd be outside. I don't think the garage is the best place for it the whole winter. But for me, I'm putting that thing in the ground and getting it planted. And you may need to stake it, since it's 7 foot tall and 2 feet wide already. I don't know what size root system it's going to have on it when it arrives, but make sure it's staked, because again, mine is permanently staked. I think it's always going to try to lean one direction if I take that stake off of it. Okay, I answered this kind of question last week about using mycorrhizal fungi in the planting hole, and you see everybody putting, mycorrhizal a foot down in the ground, which would do us no good in Raleigh with the clay soil. There's just not much living a foot down in that clay soil. There are very few roots down there typically. Most of the plants kind of root in that kind of top 6 inches, mainly in the top 4 inches probably, but maybe 6 or 8 inches down. And then somebody said they see folks using biotone all the time. It has a small amount of fertilizer, so it's like a 4-3-3. Well, I don't want to fertilize this time of year either. That's another thing, is what will be the purpose of adding nitrogen to something as something is going to sleep? That 4 in the fertilizer is nitrogen. So it's not going to have a negative impact. So if you want to use biotone in the hole. I sold it at my garden center. Lots of people swear by it, but I've never, not once, dug a hole and then dumped, anything in the bottom of it. I like to sell liquid starter fertilizer when I had my garden center, because they had to mix it, water soluble one. So they had to mix it with water, so at least I knew they were watering the plant once. That was kind of my goal in selling them on starter fertilizer, was just to make sure they'd water. But I just don't think you need any of those things. If you're taking care of your soil and you're starting this process, it's either going to get misaligned where you don't have a system in place to keep that mycorrhizal alive. You haven't gone far enough down the project, so you're just kind of wasting money. Or you've gotten to the point where your beds have been in place long enough, you've got a humus layer, you've got mulch layer, your soil's really kicking in. Using it then is kind of a waste, because the mycorrhizal's already there. So, you know what I'm saying? I mean, for me, it's just, I don't need to use it. But again, if you think it helps you, absolutely do it. I just don't think if I was going to use it, I think in our clay soils, you should dig the hole, put the plant in the hole, make sure it's sitting proud of the hole. We want to plant a little bit high in our clay soil for sure. And then pack some of the soil around it, and then put that mycorrhizal up in that top 3 or 4 inches if you were going to use that biotone. and then fill it the rest of the way in and then put your mulch on top. I hope that makes sense, but I'm not dumping it a foot down in the ground in the clay soil. I just don't think you're gonna get much benefit from that. There's nothing down there to break it down and get it working. Somebody said, what do you like about your drone and can you link it if I do like it? Yeah, so I'll link it down below the video here. We have a DJI Mini. There's rules around drones that if they're over, I think 260 grams, you have to get a different license than you do if you have one they were trying to protect toys, you know, from being regulated. And so every drone company then went straight into business making 259 gram drones, which is really kind of funny. So that drone is 259 grams. I can put it in my pocket, I can fold it and put it in my pocket. It's a great drone. It's super stable. I'm amazed how light that thing is and how much it can resist wind. You shouldn't put it up in heavy wind, but I have put it up in pretty brisk wind before and it just sits stable. So if you may have seen it in a video at the house when we did the mapping video, we did a week or so ago, that in that video you can see the drone view of the garden. It's with me right now. It's always with me. I forget to put it up sometimes. I should have put it up on that mountain house we filmed yesterday, although it was raining some, so maybe I wouldn't have done it. But I do like that drone quite a bit. It's just super lightweight, and it doesn't require all the regulations, although check in your area and where you live and all those kinds of things. There are places I can't fly it. I keep it up to date so it will tell me when and where I shouldn't be flying it, because there's one particular nursery down in Augusta that has a airport right next to it. Another nursery I tried to film a few years ago had an airport right next to it. And when I turn it on, it'll tell me I'm in a restricted area. So keep that software up to date on it, and it'll add those restricted areas, because that's where you'll get in trouble. You know, it's flying it over 300 feet and or flying it in restricted space or something like that. But it is a great tool and it's great for design. If you're, doing design in your own garden, you can put that drone up and really see what you could lay out water hoses or do the upside down paint and paint lines on the ground and then put the drone up, take a picture of it, see what it, see if, those lines make sense for your design. Kind of fun tool to design with. This person had crepe myrtles planted in full bloom. They loosened the root ball and mounded them up so they're draining well. So they did all the things right planting them. 2 days later, of course, they're drooping and the flowers are yellowing. Is it transplant shock? Should they be worried in Belgium? We were in Belgium 2 weeks ago and it's dry. I mean, really dry. I think England, a lot of England has gone a long period of time without rain, and the Netherlands was quite dry, Belgium was quite dry. Iceland was the opposite. It was raining every day we were there, and it was, I think I just looked at the forecast earlier today, and 10 more days of rain. It's raining nonstop. But it's pretty dry. So when you buy these summer, the video from yesterday, as you're watching this, we did 10 things that may be 10 things why your garden might be struggling. One of them, I included this answer to this question in, and I'll answer it again right now. If you buy these summer flowering things, if you buy summer flowering perennials, if you buy summer flowering hydrangea paniculatas or arborescents or crepe myrtles or what else am I missing? Clethra might be a summer flowering shrub that you might buy in full flower. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. If you buy something in full flower in July or August and plant it, you might normally, on a normal year, get away with this in Belgium because it wouldn't be nice. We were there, it was 92 degrees Fahrenheit a couple of days we were there. So this has been an abnormal summer for them. So it's a combination of dry and hotter than normal. So you had a little bit of what we get in the Southeast, but be careful when you bring the plant home. If you want to put a hydrangea paniculata in the ground in full bloom, you probably need to take the flowers off of it when you plant it. You'll get new flowers on it next year. They bloom on new growth. Same with the crepe myrtle. You're not going to lose anything by doing that, and so that's probably the ideal way to do it. Or enjoy the flowers in the container for a few more weeks, and once the flowers start to fade, then put it in the ground. But really the flowers need to come off, especially because those plants tend to be vigorous rooters. So you're going to have to get in there and pull those roots apart. So you're doing 20% damage to the root system and then saying, hey, you still got to flower, you still got to look good, you still got to figure out how to get water up to this thing. That's the combination that went poorly for you. And again, you're in a abnormal summer. This person's in 7B, Florida. Their Encore Azaleas are blooming. Encore Azaleas are blooming everywhere. This is a few weeks earlier than they normally bloom in Raleigh. All of ours in our garden are blooming. All of them in the neighborhood are blooming. Everywhere I go, they're blooming. They look good, but it is several weeks early for them to be blooming. I don't know what put them into, I don't know what told them all to start blooming. I think maybe autumn lilac isn't blooming yet. It's budded up, but I think all the rest of them we have are in bloom right now. And again, look good, but I'm sitting here going, it's August when they started blooming, which is definitely early. So this person wanted to know if they'll have a time to bloom again. In 9B in Florida, you may actually have enough time for them to flush again and maybe throw a few more flowers later. For us in Raleigh, I think early September is definitely the end of the line. I don't think we get any additional growth to get additional bud set, to get additional flowers. But for you, I think down there, maybe it's possible you'll get some more flowers, but you are right to recognize they're off timed. It's really strange. Normally it's October for us when we see them all come back around and bloom again in Raleigh. So interesting. Don't know what's going on there. Will waxleaf privet respond okay to winter pruning in Houston from 20 feet down to 6 feet? If they're 20 feet tall, you can probably park your car on top of them. You can probably run over them with a truck and they'd still come back. And waxleaf privet are pretty tough. So yes, you can definitely hard prune waxleaf privet without any problem. This person has a volunteer Carolina cherry laurel. Is it worth keeping? That's up to you. I mean, it's an interesting one where it's a native, but for us in our garden, it's a weed. We have several of them in the woods behind us, and you know, they seed themselves into the garden, just like the waxleaf privet, which is an invasive, does, and other things do. Great plants, especially if you can find a seedling one that's a full, you know, sometimes I'll see seedlings of cherry laurels where they're just perfection. And then I'll see other ones that are, you know, it's seedlings. So when you get seedling selections of things, there're going to be variability in them. So I don't know how nice this one will be. Keep in mind the seedling cherry laurel will produce seed itself and seed around your garden as well. So that's up to you. It is a great native. It's a host plant for several things. It's an important pollinator plant, important plant. We keep them along the edge, you know, at the house. I haven't taken them out or anything, but they are seeding themselves back into the rest of the garden, and I have to pull those seedlings quite a bit. Let's see. This person had 100-foot white oak removed because of Helene damage in Asheville. They're on a small bungalow like we have. They have a 20-foot high deck, so they need a 40 to 50-foot fast grower. Any ideas? You know, up in Asheville, you can definitely get away with more maples, you know, where you get consistent moisture on them. But this is a very small lot, and those roots would just eat everything. So I wouldn't do that. The faster something grows, sometimes, not all the time, either the shorter lived it is or the more obnoxious it is. So keep that in mind. The more problems it can end up with. For me, I mean, if I'm going to go select a tree that's going to grow big in the future, I'm going to go select another oak. Doesn't have to be a white oak, but oaks are, to me, easier to garden with overall. And I just love their stature. I love their importance in the garden. And I probably would just try to get one that's already, you know, 12 or 15 feet tall if you can afford, if you can afford it. If your checkbook matches it, I just try to get one that's already got a little bit of height on it. But that would be what I would do for sure. But there are, as I'm looking around up here, I'm in mountains, similar to yours. It is a lot of oaks. It's a lot of poplar up here. Poplars can be pretty fast growing, but they can also be pretty weak wood as well, if you're worried about that for future years. But this is mostly poplar and oaks as I'm looking around right now. That's pretty much all. And there's a red maple right there. So I got red maple. I've got white oak and I've got poplar behind me right this minute. Of course, there's a ton of tree choices. I lean toward oaks just for gardening on a small lot like that if you do want a big tree. Did I bring any plants from the old house? I did bring a few things, and I have an azalea from my grandfather's funeral that I went back and took cuttings on. And I got some plants that I had made selections on and I haven't talked a whole lot about. I've got an Akuba that I had made a selection of Akuba that I brought from the old house. I brought a camellia that is a selection of mine. Right now I've got Jason Stevens is rooting some things for me for some selections that I have made over the years, and Steph and I have made more recently, plants that we may introduce in the future, but that's happening. Number 18, advice for person in their mid-70s who wants to start a new garden. Are they too old? No, you're not too old at all. You might want to scale, your garden to, the amount of activity that you're capable of doing. Because if you jump in and try to do an 1.5 acre garden, that might be overwhelming in a way that, won't be fun to you. So, start with the size that you feel comfortable doing and jump in. I think it's a good activity to keep you young, to make you feel young, so, I don't think anybody is too old or too young or too anything that wants to, get out and enjoy, pollinators and, what a garden has to offer, and bringing, making the outside part of the inside of their houses and that kind of thing. Nobody is too old for this. But again, you might want to scale it, up in time to what you're comfortable with doing. Let's see. So this is a hobby gardener who wants to start a side hustle nursery. Any advice? I do consultations frequently. If you're actually interested in starting a nursery, I have done many consultations. Maybe somebody will make a comment down below that I've helped in the past. But I've helped a few people start landscape businesses over the years because I've done it, and I've helped a few people start nurseries over the years, or as they're getting in, helping them not to overspend, because one of the things that can go wrong is choices you make early on can have a very negative impact later, and financially can be, I've said I still own a piece of property in Johnston County that I had intended to move my nursery to when I closed my nursery. I don't know that I've said that on here, but I still have some acreage in Johnston County. And I know if I started a nursery tomorrow, I could start it for, even though the world is more expensive now, I would still save money starting a nursery now from what I know from then. But if you wanted to sign up for a consultation, I probably can save you a lot more money than the money you would spend on the consultation, which is what I try to do in those consultations frequently. Is I hope that by just recommending a place to buy plants, that will save you the money that you've spent on the consultation or whatever. Okay, let's see. This person has a 12 by 12 Yoshino cherry that's normally pink, but it was more white this year. So, okay, this is another one of those things. It's a newer, I guess, it's probably some sort of stress-related thing. They wanted to know if it had reverted back to the graft. The only way that would happen if you actually saw growth coming from below the graft down on the bottom of the plant, and that might be white. That's within their own possibility, but it won't revert to whatever the root system is on it up on the top, but it is probably stress-related. Yoshino has a kind of a pinkish white color anyway. Typically, but so again, I don't know why one was slightly whiter this year. I don't know if it had some sort of damage on it from that sudden cold during the winter time. Again, I've had a ton of ornamental trees in consultations this year that have been damaged from that cold. So it could be something like that. I would imagine it'll just go right back to where it was. And then they said one of them, has defoliated quite a bit. We've seen that on cherries. I got a cherry across the street from me at the house that's defoliated quite a bit. And we had the other cherry, other cherry question is, and then they said bad year, question mark. Yeah. Well, again, I think we've had a lot of, I don't know where you are, but we've had a lot of superficial rain this year where it feels like you're getting rain, but then you kick back the soil like 2 inches and it's really, really dry down there. So Even sometimes when you think it's moist, it may be a little bit dry. This person has a UV restricted windows, meaning it blocks sunlight bounces the sunlight back off. I talked about that in that something that can damage your garden is that sunlight coming off and actually hitting things, burning plants in your garden, which I've seen before. And then they have a room with just kind of windowless rooms in the house. Are there any house plants they can grow? I mean, there's things like philodendrons and peace lilies and monsteras, snake plants, cast iron plants. You know, there are a lot of lower light house plants. But if you have a room with no windows, you probably need some additional light. Regardless of how low light a house plant is, it's going to need some direct light. For me, I think if you're going to do houseplants in that situation, you need some sort of light, additional light added to it, some sort of grow light that you can use. Dieffenbachia is another one. A lot of the bigger leaf houseplants are capable of absorbing light through that larger surface because they're understory tropical plants, and so they're used to just getting whatever little dappled light reaches the ground. But in a room with no windows, there's no light at all. So you're going to have to, I think you're going to need some sort of light, a grow light to help you. This person's had a bunch of silt washed down into their garden, and it's keeping it abnormally wet. Is this a bad thing if it stays wet like this? That kind of silt is really hard to grow in. When construction happens and they don't put up some sort of silt fence to stop, what washes out in construction frequently is the finest material, right? It's not the rock and the grit and that kind of thing that comes with the soil as well. It's just the finest material that washes out. And that silt, can stack up. And then, if you ever walk in it, you step put footprints in it 4 inches deep. It's not a great thing to garden in. I think you need some sort of system to prevent that silt from, continuing to pile up in that area. They wanted to know if hardwood mulch would help dry it out. No, that probably will hold more water in it. Ultimately, I think you need some sort of drainage system there and some way to deflect silt from piling up in your garden like that. I don't think it's going to be a good place to, an easy thing to garden in. I mean, just from the standpoint of walking in it, with it being kind of squishy all the time, it'll go from hard packed, hardest thing you've ever walked on when it's dry, to 3 inches of muck when it's wet. Probably not a fun thing to garden in. A couple more here before we wrap this up. Somebody said cedar mulch, yay or nay. I'll leave that totally up to you. I don't like to look for mulches that break down slowly. Although cedar mulch breaks down a lot quicker than it used to. Cedar is not the same as it was 200 years ago. I pointed this out in a video a few months back. Cedar is just definitely different. It's grown in a farm. It was pushed harder. It's not the same dense wood that it once was if you're buying cedar now versus cedar 200 or 300 years ago. The old growth cedar. But just in general, I'm not looking for a mulch that breaks down slow. I'm looking for a mulch that breaks down a little faster. So I want to use leaf mold or wood chips or triple shredded hardwood mulch. I want to use something that's actually actively breaking down and feeding the plants. And so use the cedar mulch if you want to. It will break down faster than it used to, but it's still going to break down a little slower than other things. And so my goal at the end of the day is I'm feeding the plants with the mulch and not mulching as an activity so that I don't have to mulch again anytime soon, which is what a lot of people are going to want to do, right? They're going to want to, I don't want to do this activity again. Mulching is not the funnest activity. So I understand that. But if you use what you want to use, but I don't think you'll improve your soil as quickly as you would with other things. Okay. Last question for this week, number 24, shade-loving privacy shrubs that are deer-resistant, other than Alyssium and Pieris. So we did a deer video a few weeks back. But we mentioned in that using the Rutgers list. Rutgers has the deer-resistant plants divided by A, B, C, and D. D being just their candy to deer, and A being the most resistant. Doesn't mean anything. Hungry deer will eat almost anything, so keep that in mind. There's not, you know, this garden right here sitting in the middle of this mountain area, you know, in the winter, there's almost everything in this woods is either the rhododendrons and the mountain laurels are evergreen, but everything else is deciduous. So imagine, you know, what this looks like to those creatures in the wintertime when the woods have nothing in them but rhododendrons and mountain laurels. So, but with that said, you can get upright Cephalotaxis. Cephalotaxis are, I don't know where this person lives. That's another part of this question. So Cephalotaxis is going to be a little more southern than straight yews or taxus. They'll typically eat yews, but not eat Cephalotaxis, which is kind of taxus-like. Mahonia, like that Marvel Mahonia, my Marvel Mahonia is now 7 feet tall. I don't know how big your screening plant needs to be, but ultimately that plant will probably get 10 feet tall if you let it. They're upright boxwoods. You know, boxwoods work great in understories. I think they're underused. In fact, worldwide, the Buxus species all around the planet are understory plants, and then we plant them in the full sun, but don't discount them for their shade ability. Camellias tend to be on deer resistant lists, but they'll absolutely eat the buds and the flowers, and occasionally actually the leaves as well, if they're hungry. Ilex opaca, which is American hollies, you know, they tend to be on deer resistant lists, but again, it's another one. Hungry deer in the wintertime, if you have herds of them, that's going to be an issue. You know, so I'm going to be very, very unhelpful on this one, but go to that, reference that Rutgers list and stick in that A group if you have a heavy deer population, maybe the B group if you have the occasional passing through deer. But the C's and the D's are probably going to be candy. So there you go. Again, I added that guarantee thing to the garden planner over on the Weekly Garden. On the Weekly Garden Planner, we'll have content here from the mountains coming up this week. Have a ton of content left that we shot in Europe. I mean, like probably 10 or 12 videos left, and some of them are, I think, are really good stuff. And then we're going to be traveling up to Philadelphia and shooting some content up there as well in the upcoming week. So thank you guys so much for following along. And and I'm almost forgetting, make sure you ask questions down in the comment section below this video. That's where we pick from each week. I didn't say that at the beginning of the video. It's the most important thing, that you guys are asking questions, and that's where the questions come from every week. Thanks for watching.